Welcome to Photos and Travel, a show that introduces you to fascinating places around the world. Please welcome our host and tour guide, Jonathan Van Bilsen.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Photos and Travel, where we bring the world to your doorstep. Today we're traveling into the desert regions of the Middle East, specifically Jordan and one of the new 7 wonders of the world. I'm referring, of course, to Petra, an ancient city dating back to 300 BCE. People have asked us what BCE stands for, and I'll tell you right after these messages.
Planning your next travel destination is always fun, but don't forget to check with Travel Health Associates of Port Perry to learn what precautions are necessary for your destinations. Travel Health Associates of Port Perry is always ready to meet your travel needs.
I went to Petra in search of its origin and realized I had to travel to Amman, capital of Jordan, first. Amman is rich in history, with statues dating back to 7500 BCE. By the way, BCE stands for Before Common Era, and CE refers to Common Era. The start of Common Era is defined by the year 0. One of the most interesting sites near Amman is Jerash, an ancient Roman settlement which flourished until the mid-8th century CE, when it was abandoned. As soon as I arrived in Jordan, I connected with Jamal Jarar, my guide for the duration of my trip. We immediately drove to the ancient city of Jerash, located about 45 minutes outside of Amman. Jerash has been inhabited since the Bronze Age and is known for its ruins of the walled Greco-Roman settlement just outside of the modern city. Modern-day Jerash has a population of about 50,000 and has undergone many disruptive and hostile takeovers since its first settlers, who were believed to be nomadic tribes. Ancient Greek inscriptions from the city support that it was founded by Alexander the Great, who allegedly settled retired Macedonian soldiers here during the spring of 331 BCE when he left Egypt. Jerash flourished during the Greek and Roman periods until the mid-8th century CE, when a large earthquake demolished most of it. Subsequent earthquakes contributed to the additional destruction. However, in the year 1120, the ruler of Damascus ordered 40 men to build a fort. Unfortunately, it was captured a year later by the king of Jerusalem and was totally destroyed. Wells such as this were built to collect water in this very dry desert city. Jerash was deserted until it was rediscovered in the beginning of the Ottoman rule in the early 16th century. Archaeological digs have been taking place since 1925 and continued to this day. In 2011, excavations determined that people have been living in this area much longer than expected, and human remains dating back to 7500 BCE were uncovered. After the Roman conquest in 63 BCE, Jerash and the land surrounding it were primarily inhabited by Syrians, along with a small Jewish community. It was later annexed to the Roman cities of Petra and Philadelphia, which is now Amman. Jerash is considered one of the largest and most well-preserved sites of Roman architecture in the world, outside of Italy. It is also the first Middle Eastern country I've ever been to where one can hear bagpipes. This is the Temple of Artemis, the patron goddess of the city and one of the most remarkable monuments left throughout the ancient Roman Middle East. This, the Cardo Colonnade Street, is still paved with the original stones, and the ruts worn by chariots are still visible. The 800-meter Cardo was the architectural spine and focal point of Jerash. In the second half of the 1st century, the city achieved great prosperity. Roads were constructed throughout the province and more trade came to the city. We drove south to visit Amman, capital of Jordan. With a population of 4 million, it has seen substantial growth after successive waves of refugees from Palestine, Iraq, and Syria. It is a modern city with numerous ancient archaeological sites. My first stop was the Citadel, an ancient Roman ruin standing watch on top of a hill overlooking the city and dating back to the 2nd century CE. The Temple of Hercules is one of the most popular attractions at the Citadel. The temple includes 2 9-meter-tall columns among other ruins. On display is a huge hand which is believed to be from a 12-meter-high statue of Hercules. The views from the archaeological site are amazing and most of Amman can be seen. Here we see the ruins of the Umiyad Palace, built during the first half of the 8th century. It is now largely ruined with a restored domed entrance chamber, known as the Monumental Gateway. This audience hall is the most significant part of the whole palace edifice. It is one of the most famous archaeological buildings not only at Amman Citadel, but in all of Jordan. It was built to be used as a reception hall to meet expeditions and army leaders. In 1998, the hall was roofed by a modern wooden dome to allow the structure to be used more easily for modern cultural events. The palace is a popular photo spot as both inside and out offer spectacular images. Jamal drove me down from the Citadel to the Roman Amphitheater and its 6,000-seat capacity. It is a famous landmark in the Jordanian capital and dates back to the 2nd century when the city was known as Philadelphia. There are 2 Jordanian museums of popular traditions housed in the western and eastern sections of the Roman theater respectively, and both provide exciting knowledge, artifact, and cultural insight into Roman life from the past. Amman is a beautiful city with fantastic monuments, including the King Abdullah Mosque. It was built between 1982 and 1989 and is capped by a magnificent blue mosaic dome beneath which 3,000 Muslims may offer prayer. The kingdom and people of Jordan take great pride in their culture of religious tolerance, codified by the Amman message which states that Islam honors every human being, regardless of color, race, or religion. To that end, it is one of the few mosques that allow non-Muslim visitors. Out of respect, I was asked to avoid entry as midday prayers were taking place. This beautiful azure blue dome can be seen for kilometers across the city. Across the street from the mosque is the Al-Bishara Greek Orthodox Church. The Jordanian Greek Orthodox Christians are believed to number 120,000, most of whom are Arab-speaking. The church is adorned with beautiful paintings depicting the New Testament. Approximately 6% of Jordanians are Christian, with the majority belonging to the Greek Orthodox Church. More than 92% of the population are Sunni Muslims, and Jordan values its diverse population, consequently providing for the cultural rights of all its citizens. I continued on to visit Mount Nebo, the place where, according to the Hebrew Bible, Moses was granted a view of the Promised Land. The entrance is marked by a beautiful monolith commemorating a visit by Pope John Paul II in 2000. He planted an olive tree to commemorate this religious site. A structure has been erected over the remains of a Byzantine church dating back to the 4th century with beautiful, well-preserved mosaics carefully placed inside. Moses ascended Mount Nebo to view the land of Canaan, which God had said he would never enter. After viewing the promised land from Mount Nebo, he died on the plains of Moab, about a 7-hour walk away. I stopped at the Byzantine Church of St. George to view the famous remnants of the oldest map of the Middle East, dating back to the 6th century CE. This rather modest 19th century Greek Orthodox church houses a treasury of early Christianity. Imagine the excitement in 1884 when Christian builders came across the remnants of a Byzantine church on their construction site. Among the rubble having survived willful destruction, fire, and neglect, the flooring they discovered wasn't just another mosaic, but one with extraordinary significance. To this day, it represents the oldest map of Palestine in existence and provides many historical insights into the region. My trip continued south in the direction of Petra, but first I have to make a stop at Karak, home of one of the Crusaders' strongholds. The castle, built in 1140, is one of the largest Crusaders' castles in the Middle East. These rooms were once thought to be the private apartments of the Crusader Lord of Karak, but archaeological excavation has now shown that they are older and probably belong to the Sultan, who built the palace originally. Because of its position east of the Dead Sea, Karak Castle was able to control Bedouin herders as well as the trade routes from Damascus to Egypt and Mecca. At last, I make my way south to Petra, and after a 2.5-hour drive through the desert, I was glad to check into the Movenpick Hotel, located directly across the street from the archaeological site known as Petra. I entered the site when it opened the next morning at 7:30 and decided to walk rather than engage a touristy horse, donkey, or camel. Fortunately, it was fairly empty as the cruise ship crowds from the Gulf of Aqaba would not arrive until noon. Many people think Petra is the new beginning of a civilization, but in actual fact it is the end. The people who originally lived here were nomads, known as the Nabateans. They traveled across the Arabian desert living in tents. Their ancestors today still live here and are known as the Bedouins. The Nabateans traded along the Silk Road and decided to settle in this well-protected valley as early as 300 BCE. Their ability to work with water was amazing, and they carved troughs in the walls, channeling water from mountain runoffs into huge cisterns. After a 2-kilometer walk, Jamal and I arrived at the unbelievably spectacular Treasury Building. The structure is believed to have been the mausoleum of a Nabatean king in the 1st century CE. It is one of the most popular tourist attractions in both Jordan and the entire region. Petra lies in a basin which runs from the Dead Sea to the Gulf of Aqaba and is surrounded by mountains and cliffs, which has given it its vantage point during the Nabatean times and has kept it hidden for centuries in later years. When we come back, we'll continue our trek through the ancient mystical settlement of Petra.
Don't feel like spending an hour in the grocery store? With PC Express, you don't have to. Simply download the app, choose your groceries, and the staff at Voss's Independent Grocer in Port Perry will have it ready for you to pick up. Come to Voss's, your independent grocer.
Construction of the Treasury Building was quite an achievement, but it's only a small part of the entire story of Petra. A major trade route, Petra flourished for 400 years under Nabatean rule as a profitable stop along the Silk Road. Time constraints prevent many day tourists from seeing much more than the Treasury Building. Fortunately, we'll have time to visit the entire valley. Most of the temples in Petra were carved from the top down. Scaffolding was erected to support the workers as they carved the intricate facades. As debris from the sculpting fell to the ground, it gave them a platform on which to stand and finish the work. Climbing the surrounding rocks is not for the faint at heart, and I was concerned about completing the 7-kilometer trek, especially in the 40-degree heat. Once I made it to the top and saw the views, I knew I had to complete the journey. In 1812, the city of Petra was rediscovered by Swiss explorer Johann Burckhardt. As Western Europe continued to explore the Middle East, tourism became more common, and by the 1920s, a small hotel had opened near Petra. Tourism started to change the economy and social structure of the Bedouin people who lived nearby. They are now the guardians of the site and are the only ones allowed to conduct commerce. The Nabateans began to replace their tents with caves which they carved from the soft sandstone. As time went on, they became more elaborate as they wanted to show caravan travelers how successful they were. The caves are not very deep, and recently the inhabitants have been relocated to the village of Petra. Today the caves are used only to give transport animals a bit of shade. The Nabateans flourished for 400 years, but in 106 CE lost their independence to the Roman Empire, who changed the name from Nabatea to Arabia Petraea. Petra's importance declined as sea trade routes emerged, and after an earthquake in 363 CE, many structures were destroyed. The amphitheater seen here dates back to the 1st century CE. This monument was originally built by the Nabateans, but after the Romans took over Petra, they extended the floor level and added seating, making it capable of hosting 8,500 spectators, more than the Great Theater in Amman. The population of Petra during its heyday peaked at 20,000 inhabitants, but after the Roman annexation, the decline in overland trading, and the massive earthquake, the city was taken over by Byzantines, who introduced Christianity and built elaborate churches adorned with spectacular mosaics as seen here. By the beginning of the 8th century CE, Petra was largely abandoned and no longer a significant location commercially, politically, or culturally. Although no longer an important city, Petra had been noted by historians and archaeologists for its unique architecture as well as specific innovations made by the Nabatean Bedouins that established the city. Moving along the main avenue, I came upon a series of tombs located high up in the mountains. The most famous and biggest is the tomb of Onaishu, that dates back to the 1st century AD. This strenuous climb was worth the effort, as the tombs are still in good shape. It certainly makes you appreciate the craftsmanship possessed by the Nabateans at the time. Cutting such huge rocks and giving them the shape of buildings with rudimentary axes is truly amazing. The view certainly makes you appreciate the vastness and desolation of the surrounding area. Continuing my journey, I was surprised to see a hotel located at the foot of the steps leading to the famous monastery. I decided to rest for a bit, as the temperatures were taking their toll and I was about to embark on the most difficult part of the journey, the 850 steps leading to the monastery. Jamal led the way and I did my best to keep up. The steps are hewn out of the rocks and are not very even. It took a good hour to make my way to the top. Thank goodness the downward trek back would be easier. I was passed by donkeys carrying tourists, a practice which is questionable. The cost of the ride is about $20, and in some cases there is a charge for disembarking. It is still a fair distance to walk once you're off the donkeys. At long last, I made it to the top, and the view of the monastery facade was spectacular. The monastery probably originally served a complex religious purpose, and it was possibly repurposed as a church in the Byzantine period. Scholars believe that the flat area in front of the monastery was leveled through human action in order to make the area suitable for social gatherings or religious occasions. The rocks and cliffs of the surrounding area are steep and the view is breathtaking. After a lengthy visit exploring the area around the monastery, I began my departure back down the stairs and through the valley to the entrance of Petra. Even though the valley is only 7 kilometers long, the constant detours to visit sites turned my adventure into 30,000 steps or 21 kilometers and lasted nearly 10 hours. It was an unforgettable experience and I felt fortunate to have done it, as most tourists do not venture far past the Treasury Building. I stopped for a rest when I arrived at the Treasury Building and was surprised at how many vacationers were now there. I'm glad I started the day early, otherwise I don't think I would have been able to see it all. I can't get over the beauty of this place and to think it was built by people who just a century before wandered the desert. I have learned about and witnessed the ingenuity of the Nabatean people, and it was their mastery of water that allowed them to thrive and create the ancient wonder of the world that is Petra. I continued my trek into the Jordanian desert to explore the area known as Wadi Rum. We dropped off our car and hired a four-wheel drive vehicle with a driver, as the desert landscape is a difficult one to navigate. The Nabatean people who originally lived here were nomads, traveling across the Arabian desert and living in tents. Today the desert is still traveled, but by their cousins, the Bedouins. The English word for Bedouin comes from the Arabic Badawi, which means desert dweller. They are traditionally divided into tribes and historically share a common culture of herding camels and goats. At the start of my desert adventure, the roads were in good shape, but soon they simply vanished and we were surrounded by desert. The import of exotic goods from Africa and India and then selling them to the Greeks and Romans was most profitable, and every year the Nabateans traded the equivalent of $180 million US. The most popular product was frankincense, and as the profits grew, their desire to settle grew with it. I decided to take leave of the vehicle and try my luck at exploring the desert on foot. Needless to say, it was quite hot, and my adventure soon continued in the truck. A question that has baffled archaeologists for years was how did they survive in such dry area with no rivers to give them any water? It seems they dug cisterns into sandstone and channeled water from mountain runoffs into it, the same practice they carried on in Petra. This gave them enough water to survive and farm as well. Jamal showed me how easy it was to climb the rocks, but my fear of heights kept me a safe distance back. We continued on through the desert to a camp similar to the ones made by the nomads for centuries. This particular one was of interest because of its connection with British officer T.E. Lawrence, who passed through here several times during the Arab Revolt of 1917 and 18. He even left his mark on the face of one of the rocks. I took a break while Jamal was brought up to speed by his friends of the latest news and events, an ancient form of social media. Several Star Wars movies were filmed in this region, mainly because of its resemblance to distant planets, or at least our perception of them. Greek texts explain that somewhere in these mountains is the treasury of the Nabateans, with silver worth over $10 million US. It has not been found, and no doubt many are looking for its secret hiding place. We left the desert area of Wadi Rum and headed back to the main road to continue my adventure. We headed north again to visit Shobak Castle, another stronghold of the Crusades. This massive fortress was built in 1115 on a mountain renamed Mont Real, or Royal Mountain, in honor of the king of the area. Little remains of the original Crusader fortifications, and although it was never fully excavated, it is known that there was a set of 3 walls which partially remain. The most significant remains of the Crusader portions of the castle are the remnants of a curtain wall that ran inside the later Muslim additions. Beneath one of the 2 churches in the castle are catacombs, which contain Islamic tablets and Christian carvings. The towers are decorated with carved inscriptions dating from the 14th century renovations. The Arabic engravings honor the Sultan who reigned in the late 13th century. Shobak Castle came under the control of Reynaud of Châtillon, a French nobleman who joined the Second Crusade. He began pillaging the caravans that passed nearby, provoking Saladin, a Sunni Muslim of Kurdish ethnicity who fought against the Crusades. Saladin descended upon the Crusader kingdom, taking Jerusalem and then later seizing Shobak. What can be seen today is mostly the reconstruction by Saladin and the Mamluks who later conquered the area. Traveling Jordan certainly gave me a knowledgeable insight into the Nabatean people who settled in Petra and prospered during its existence. Their devastation came at the hands of the Romans, which slowly led to its abandonment. Petra is certainly justified in becoming one of the 7 wonders of the world. From its ancient history under Nabatean rule, then taken over by the Romans, and today a national monument operated by the Bedouins, it is a must-see on anyone's bucket list. For Photos and Travel, I'm Jonathan Van Bilsen. It's been my pleasure to be your tour guide today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. If you like this program, please click the subscribe button and you'll never miss an episode.
Want to know what's happening in Skugog? News and lifestyle, changes in business, and all the entertainment information you'll ever need. Plus, each edition has a new Photos and Travel article. Look for your next copy in your mailbox.